There are some disappearances that seem to happen gradually. A person misses a phone call, then misses a train, then misses work. Then days pass, and the people who love them begin to understand that something is wrong. But sometimes, a person is there one moment, clearly visible, moving through an ordinary public place beneath bright lights and security cameras. And then, only minutes later, they are gone. Not from a remote hiking trail. Not from a dark road in the middle of the night. Not from a place where there were no witnesses and no cameras. But from an airport, a place built around names, documents, tickets, schedules, and movement. A place where every direction is marked, every doorway has a purpose, and every passenger is expected to be going somewhere. On a warm July morning, a young man walked into an airport near the Black Sea coast. He had a flight to catch. He had a passport. He had luggage. He had a mother waiting for him to come home. He had already been frightened. That much was clear. In the hours before he entered the terminal, he had spoken to his mother again and again. His voice was tense. Sometimes he spoke quietly, almost as if he did not want to be overheard. He told her that people were following him. He told her that something was wrong. Still, he reached the airport, and for a brief moment, it seemed that the simplest ending was still possible. He would see a doctor. He would be cleared for travel. Or he would wait a little longer. He would board a plane. He would return to Germany. And the strange fear that had settled around him would become something to explain later. Instead, in the final confirmed images of him, he runs out of the terminal. He runs across open ground. He climbs a fence. And then he disappears toward the fields and trees beyond the airport. Behind him, he leaves his luggage, his wallet, his mobile phone, his passport, everything a traveler needs to go home. And from that morning onward, the question has remained quietly open. What was he running from? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we are covering the disappearance of Lars Mittank, one of the most widely discussed missing person cases in modern Europe. Partly because of where it happened, and partly because the last known moments were captured on camera. This is a real case involving a real family, real fear, and a real absence that has lasted for years. So we will move carefully. We will not turn uncertainty into certainty. We will not treat speculation as fact. And we will not use the final footage as a spectacle. Instead, we will follow the known timeline as gently and clearly as possible. Beginning with a holiday by the sea, then moving through a series of small decisions, medical concerns, phone calls, and moments of distress, until we arrive at the airport in Varna, Bulgaria, on July 8th, 2014. The story is unsettling, not because it is loud, but because it is quiet in the most painful way. A young man was far from home. Something frightened him. And then he vanished. Lars Mittank was 28 years old in the summer of 2014. He was German, born in 1986, and he lived a life that, by many accounts, seemed steady and familiar. He had family. He had friends. He had a job. He was close to his mother, Sandra Mittank, who would later become one of the most persistent voices in the search for him. Those who knew Lars did not describe him as someone who was constantly in trouble or looking for danger. He was not famous before he vanished. He was not a public figure. He was simply a young man who went on holiday with friends and did not come back. At the end of June 2014, Lars traveled with a group of friends to Bulgaria. Their destination was Golden Sands, a resort area near Varna on the Black Sea coast. Golden Sands is a place built for summer travel. Beaches, hotels, restaurants, bars, music, sun, and tourists from many countries. For visitors from Germany, it was a relatively accessible holiday destination, a place where a group of friends could spend a week swimming, eating, going out, and stepping away from normal life for a while. The trip began normally. According to later accounts from friends, the week moved quickly. They relaxed, spent time by the water, played football, went out at night, and did the ordinary things people do when they are young and away from home. There were no early signs that this holiday would become part of a missing person investigation. Some details have been repeated over the years, though not all carry the same weight. One friend reportedly recalled that Lars did not seem to eat very much during the trip, sometimes having only a small amount of food. That detail has been discussed often, but by itself, it does not explain what happened. People eat differently on holiday. People behave differently in heat, in crowds, in unfamiliar places. It is a small detail, and it should remain small unless better evidence gives it a larger meaning. What is clearer is that the final part of the trip changed the tone. The group was due to fly home in early July, but shortly before the planned return, Lars became involved in an incident that would alter the rest of the timeline. The accounts generally describe a disagreement connected to football. Lars was reportedly a supporter of Werder Bremen, and the disagreement involved other German tourists associated with Bayern Munich. It began as a verbal dispute. What happened after that is less certain in detail. But by the next morning, Lars told his friends that he had been assaulted. He said he had been beaten by several men. He had injuries, including pain around the jaw and an ear injury. A doctor later diagnosed a ruptured eardrum. That detail became important because flying with an ear injury can be painful and potentially risky due to pressure changes during takeoff and landing. Lars's friends were still scheduled to return home. He was not. A doctor advised him not to fly immediately. He was prescribed the antibiotic cefprozil. The plan became that Lars would remain in Bulgaria a little longer, recover enough to travel, and then return to Germany. His friends offered to stay with him. That is one of the quietly heartbreaking details of the case. It suggests that, at that point, they were not abandoning him. They knew he was injured and away from home. They were willing to delay their own travel, but Lars reportedly insisted that they go. He told them he would be all right. He was an adult, and the situation still seemed manageable. He had seen a doctor. He could stay one night near the airport. His mother could help arrange travel. In an ordinary version of events, this would have been inconvenient, perhaps stressful, but not catastrophic. So his friends left Bulgaria, and Lars stayed behind. From this point onward, the story becomes lonelier. He checked out of the resort and moved to a hotel in Varna. often identified in reports as Hotel Color Varna. It was closer to the airport and less expensive than the resort. For a traveler trying to wait out a medical issue and make a new plan, it was a practical choice. But once Lars was alone, his behavior appeared to change. This is where the case begins to narrow into a series of phone calls, camera images, and unanswered questions. Lars contacted his mother. Sandra, the calls were alarming. He told her that people were trying to harm him. He spoke of being followed. He asked her to cancel his bank cards. His voice, according to later accounts from his mother, was frightened. She could hear distress in him. He did not sound like a man simply annoyed by a delayed flight. He sounded afraid. At the hotel, security footage reportedly showed him behaving uneasily. He paced in the corridors. He looked out of windows. He appeared to hide or wait in an elevator. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, he left the hotel for about an hour before returning. Where he went during that time is not known. That blank hour has attracted a great deal of speculation, but speculation cannot fill it. It could have been anything from a frightened walk outside, to an attempt to check his surroundings, to an encounter no one has been able to confirm. The evidence does not tell us. What we can say is that Lars was alone in a foreign city, injured, anxious, and in repeated contact with his mother. Sandra tried to help him from Germany. She helped arrange plans. She stayed on the phone. She listened to her son describe fear that she could not see and could not easily verify. For a parent, that distance must have been unbearable. She knew he was in trouble, but she could not reach through the phone and bring him home. By the morning of July 8th, 2014, Lars was supposed to go to Varna Airport. That airport visit was meant to be a step towards safety. He needed medical clearance or advice. He needed to know whether he could fly. He had a route home within reach. The airport was not a hidden place. It was busy, public, and full of systems meant to move people from one place to another. He took his belongings with him. He reached the airport. He texted or contacted his mother to say he had arrived. And then he went to see the airport doctor. Strictly speaking, the disappearance of Lars Mittank is not officially understood as a proven crime. That distinction matters. There is no confirmed murder scene, no confirmed abduction, no confirmed evidence that another person physically forced him away from the airport. But this is still a true crime story, because it is a missing person case surrounded by fear, possible harm, uncertain events, and an investigation that has never fully answered what happened to a real person. The central event took place inside Varna Airport. The airport doctor is commonly identified in reports as Dr. Kostov. Lars met with him on July 8th. According to later accounts, the doctor found Lars nervous and unsettled, but did not identify a clear reason that he could not travel. Some reports state that Lars was told he was fit to fly. Still, Lars appeared unsure. He had concerns about the medication he had been given. He had concerns about his condition. And, from what he had told his mother, he had concerns about people around him. Then a construction worker entered the office. The airport was reportedly undergoing renovation work at the time. A worker entering a room would normally be a small interruption, the kind of passing moment most people forget immediately. For Lars, it seemed to trigger fear. Accounts of the moment describe him becoming alarmed. He reportedly said words to the effect of, "I don't want to die here," and that he had to get out. Then he ran. He left behind his luggage and personal belongings, including his phone, wallet, and passport. That detail is central to the case because it makes many simple explanations harder. A person who wants to travel needs a passport. A person who wants to call for help needs a phone. A person who wants food, shelter, or transport needs money or cards. Lars abandoned the objects that connected him to home and to survival. Security footage showed him leaving the airport quickly. The images have since become widely circulated online. They show a young man in summer clothing moving with urgency, running away from the terminal, crossing open areas, and heading away from the controlled space of the airport. He climbed a fence. Then he ran toward an area of fields and vegetation near the airport. After that, there is no confirmed sighting. That is the point where the case opens into silence. Not because people failed to notice him before then, not because there was no record of him, but because the record stops. One of the most haunting elements of the case is how visible Lars was until the very end. He was not an abstract missing person on a blurry road. He was seen walking. He was seen entering the airport. He was seen running. His final known movement has a direction, a place, a time. And still, he was not found. When a person disappears in a remote forest or in bad weather, the landscape itself can explain part of the mystery. But Lars disappeared near an airport, near roads, near a city, in daylight. That does not mean the search was easy. It only means the contradiction is hard to accept. He was somewhere, then he was nowhere. Theories formed almost immediately. Some believed he may have been experiencing a psychological crisis, possibly brought on by stress, injury, fear, lack of sleep, or some combination of factors. Some wondered whether the head or ear injury had affected him in a way that was not fully understood. Some wondered whether he had encountered people who genuinely frightened him. Others suggested he may have chosen to disappear, though the abandonment of his belongings and the distress of his calls make that explanation difficult for many to accept. The careful answer is that none of these theories has been proven. The confirmed facts remain limited. He was injured after an altercation. He was advised not to fly immediately. He stayed behind alone. He became frightened and contacted his mother. He behaved uneasily at the hotel. He reached the airport. He saw a doctor. He ran from the airport without his belongings. He has not been confirmed alive or located since. In many cases, the unknown is filled by evidence over time. Here, time has mostly deepened the unknown. After Lars vanished, the search began with the most immediate and practical question. Where could he have gone after leaving the airport? He had run toward open land near Varna Airport. Searchers needed to consider the surrounding terrain, nearby roads, wooded areas, fields, construction zones, abandoned structures, and places where a frightened person might hide. His belongings were still behind him. That created urgency without his passport, phone, wallet, or luggage. Lars would have had a difficult time moving through official channels. He could not easily board a plane. He could not easily check into a hotel under his own name. He could not easily contact his family. If he remained in Bulgaria, he would have been without the normal tools of travel and identification. Authorities looked for him. His family searched. His mother sought help. A private investigator was reportedly hired. Hospitals and records were checked. Leads and possible sightings were followed. But Lars did not appear. The public attention around the case grew because of the footage. For many missing person cases, the last sighting is described in words. A witness says someone walked down a street, got into a car, entered a shop, or left a home. In Lars's case, people could watch the final confirmed moments again and again. That gave the case a strange second life online. The footage is short, but emotionally powerful. Viewers see him moving through an ordinary airport, then suddenly running as though he is trying to escape something immediate. Because the camera cannot show what was in his mind, people began projecting possible explanations onto the images. Some viewers saw panic, some saw pursuit, even when no clear pursuer was visible. Some saw a person in crisis. Some saw a man making a deliberate escape. The danger with footage like this is that it feels like evidence of everything, when really it is evidence of only what the camera captured. A camera can show movement. It can show direction. It can show objects left behind. It cannot show motive unless motive is supported by other evidence. So, investigators and family members had to work with both the visibility and the limitations of the footage. Reports over the years have described multiple possible sightings of Lars in different places. Some were in Bulgaria, some were elsewhere. Some involved men who looked similar. One widely discussed case in Brazil turned out not to be Lars, but another missing man, Anton Pilipa, a Canadian who had disappeared years earlier. That mistaken identification shows how difficult public searches can become when images circulate widely and hope is attached to resemblance. Another reported lead involved a German truck driver who believed he may have given a ride to a man resembling Lars years after the disappearance. But that, too, did not resolve the case. The family's search continued. Sandra Mittank remained publicly involved, asking for information and keeping her son's name visible. Her belief that Lars may still be alive has been reported many times. For some families of missing people, hope becomes a daily act of endurance. It does not mean certainty. It means refusing to let absence become neglect. The investigation has also had to consider the medical and psychological context. Lars had an ear injury, reportedly a ruptured eardrum. He had been prescribed an antibiotic. He had been under stress. He had been sleeping poorly, or at least behaving unusually during the night at the hotel. He was alone in an unfamiliar country after his friends returned home. Any one of those things might be manageable. Together, they may have created a fragile situation. But again, there is a boundary between possibility and proof. There is no publicly confirmed evidence that medication caused his behavior. There is no publicly confirmed evidence that he was under the influence of illegal drugs. There is no publicly confirmed evidence of a long-standing, severe mental illness. There is also no publicly confirmed evidence that the people he feared were actually following him. That is what makes the case so difficult. The known facts point toward fear. They do not clearly identify the source of that fear. When Lars told his mother that people were trying to kill or rob him, he may have been describing a real threat. He may have been misinterpreting ordinary events through panic. He may have been in a state where fear itself had become overwhelming. Or the truth may be something that does not fit neatly into any of those categories. Investigators also had to consider whether Lars could have survived outdoors. He reportedly had some experience with hunting, fishing, or outdoor activity. But being capable outdoors in familiar circumstances is not the same as surviving suddenly, injured, without supplies, in a foreign place, possibly in distress. Summer heat, dehydration, confusion, and injury can become dangerous quickly. If Lars died somewhere after leaving the airport, the question becomes why no remains were found. If Lars survived and moved onward, the question becomes how he did so without documents, money, or contact with his family. If someone harmed him, the question becomes who, where, and why no clear evidence has emerged. Every theory creates another question, and every question returns to that final image of him running. The disappearance of Lars Mittank remains unsolved because the evidence stops at the moment when the mystery begins. That may sound simple, but it is the heart of the case. We know a great deal about the days before he vanished compared with many missing person cases. We know where he traveled. We know who he was with. We know he was injured. We know he stayed behind. We know he called his mother. We know he behaved fearfully. We know he went to the airport. We know he ran. But after the fence, the certainty ends. There is no confirmed trail. No confirmed transaction. No confirmed phone call. No confirmed border crossing. No confirmed medical admission. No confirmed sighting accepted as Lars. In missing person cases, resolution often comes from one of three things. A body is found, a person is located alive, or someone with direct knowledge comes forward. None of those has happened publicly in this case. The location adds complexity. Varna is a real city with roads, neighborhoods, industrial areas, undeveloped spaces, and access to wider transport routes. A person leaving the airport could move into areas that are not easily monitored. A frightened person might hide. A confused person might avoid help. A vulnerable person might encounter danger. A determined person might find unofficial ways to move. But none of those possibilities can be chosen as the answer without evidence. The case also remains unsolved because the most compelling piece of evidence, the airport footage, is emotionally strong but factually limited. It shows Lars running. It does not show why. For the human mind, that is almost unbearable. We are built to search for cause and effect. When we see someone running in fear, we want to see the danger behind them. If the danger is not visible, we invent possibilities. We rewind. We pause. We look at shadows, doorways, timing, strangers. Gestures. But the footage does not give us a clear pursuer. It gives us urgency. And urgency is not the same as explanation. Another reason the case remains unresolved is that Lars's own statements, while important, are difficult to interpret. He told his mother that people were after him. A missing person's own fear should never be dismissed. But fear can come from outside danger, internal crisis, or both. It can be accurate, distorted, or rooted in a real incident that later grows in the mind under stress. Investigators must respect what he said while also testing it against evidence. So far, no public evidence has confirmed the existence of people actively pursuing him at the airport. But absence of public evidence is not the same as proof that no threat existed at any stage. That uncertainty must remain open. The altercation before his disappearance also remains partly unclear. Lars said he had been assaulted. He had injuries. But the exact circumstances of the fight, who was involved, whether it connected to anything later, and whether it created genuine ongoing danger, have not been fully established in public reporting. It may have been the beginning of everything. It may have been only the event that placed him in a vulnerable position. It may have been unrelated to whatever happened after the airport. This is where responsible storytelling has to slow down. There is a temptation to build a clean narrative. A fight leads to fear. Fear leads to paranoia. Paranoia leads to running. Running leads to disappearance. That is one possible line. But life is often less tidy than narrative. The truth may involve overlapping factors. A physical injury, a frightening encounter, anxiety, lack of sleep, isolation, a foreign environment, miscommunication, a chance meeting, a wrong turn, a dangerous stranger, a hidden accident. The reason the case has stayed in public memory is not because there are no explanations. It is because there are too many partial explanations, and none of them reaches the end. When we think of Lars Mittank now, it is easy for the airport footage to become the whole story. A man in a yellow shirt, a sudden run, a fence, a field, then nothing. But Lars was more than those final images. He was a son. He was a friend. He was a young man who went on holiday expecting to come home with stories, photographs, and ordinary memories. A week by the sea, a delayed flight, perhaps, an injury that would heal, a strange few days that would become something to talk about later. Instead, his name became attached to one of the most haunting disappearances of the internet age. Not because the internet solved it, but because the internet could see the moment when he vanished and still could not answer it. There is something deeply human in the way people return to the case. Beneath the theories and speculation is a simple wish: to understand what happened to someone who seemed so close to safety. He had reached the airport. He had contacted his mother. He was near doctors, passengers, staff, security cameras, and flights home. And still, he slipped beyond reach. For Varna Mittank, the case is not a mystery to be watched from a distance. It is the absence of her son. It is years of waiting, searching, hoping, and living with a question that has no gentle answer. Somewhere between the hotel hallway and the airport doctor's office, Lars entered a state of fear, that no one around him could fully understand in time. Maybe he was running from something real. Maybe he was running from something he believed was real. Maybe he was running from the aftershock of an injury, a confrontation, a sleepless night, and a mind overwhelmed in a place far from home. The final truth may be simple. It may be complicated. It may be known to someone. Or it may be hidden in a small, quiet place that searchers have not yet found. But what remains clear is that Lars Mittank mattered before he disappeared. And he matters still. His story asks us to hold uncertainty without turning it into entertainment. It asks us to remember that every missing person case is not only a puzzle, but a wound. And tonight, as we leave this story, we leave it gently, with the image not of the run, but of the hope that came before it. A mother waiting for a call, a flight waiting to board, a young man trying, somehow, to get home. Thank you for listening. If you are using this episode for sleep, you can let the rest of the night be quiet now. And if you are still awake, take a moment to remember Lars Mittank as a real person, not only as a mystery. May his family one day receive the answers they have waited for. And may every missing person be spoken of with care.